The Tulane Green Wave have a new head coach, and Tyler Shough may have a job as the Saints QB in 2026 if it keeps this performance up. We're talking about that and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to a brand new Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. As always, we took Monday off, had some things come up on Sunday night, so wasn't necessarily able to squeeze in a recording session. My apologies, but we do have a good bit to get into, namely the college football playoff when it comes to Tulane, because congratulations, the Green Wave alongside JMU are representing the group of five in the college football playoff. For the first time ever, two teams from the G5 are in it. Thanks in large part to the anarchy that Duke created on Saturday. And that's where I want to kind of start off here. Like, we'll get to what's going on with the Tulane Green Wave. New head coach was announced. So some big news there. We're going to talk about the Saints, but I want to get to this because this has been stuck in my craw over the last 24 hours. Is the entitlement I have seen from people, the discourse over the last 48 hours since the announcement right around noon on Sunday about what's going on and the fact that Miami, Alabama, Notre Dame, the debate, and the fact that two group of five schools are occupying spots when I'm going to quote something directly from Danny Cannell, who I liked his stuff back when he was with him, Ryan Russillo back in the Gap. Danny Cannell saying basically, we're all arguing about Miami, Alabama, Notre Dame, and overlooking that two group of five schools are occupying spots when they have zero business playing in it this year. Tulane lost 45-10 to Ole Miss. JMU only played one P4 school and lost by 14. What a mess, end quote. Danny, shut up. Because I think Tulane absolutely deserves to be in there. JMU is kind of that one I'm like, but at the same time, Duke played spoiler. Now, that's a different debate entirely about how they're going to change literally everything about the way the ACC operates now when it comes to the championship game, if they even have a championship game at all, because there's no reason why you should have a team that is sub 500, that is 6-2 in conference, 8-5 overall, be your champion when you have Virginia, who is at 10-3 and 10-2. University of Miami. That is a massive oversight. I understand, things happen, but at the end of the day, that's not a great look for your conference to have that. It caused anarchy. And also, let's throw this log in the fire, at least when it comes to Tulane. Tulane may have lost 45-10 to Ole Miss, but they also beat, in a weird way, the reigning ACC champions. You can't debate that. It's just facts. And again, the AAC is probably one of the best conferences amongst the group of five year in and year out. JMU, really good team, 12-1. They deserve to be in that consideration, to be one of those teams. Mind you, anarchy had to happen, and anarchy did indeed happen. The ACC has to have a serious conversation about, maybe the best overall records should be in there. Alabama being in there as a 3-loss team, it's still, that might be the one I'm kind of like irked about, but it's just because I'm tired of seeing Alabama get the free hall pass. It's just not a great look overall for the state of college football if we continue to see Alabama just sneak in there even after losing and getting their behinds whipped. Yeah, I'm not cool with that. And then comes the Notre Dame debate. And I feel like people just root for this team to continue being relevant. I understand last year, they come close to a national championship. Great for them. But at the same time, you started off the season with 2 losses to 2 teams that are in the playoff. Miami Hurricanes and Texas A&M. They were close, yes. But just because you're Notre Dame doesn't mean you get a pass. Whenever you play the rest of your schedule, some mid to awful teams. Outside of those 2 wins that you had, you only had 1 win that you could say, yeah, that's neat. Good job. And that's USC. That's the only game that you have in terms of a win on your record that you could say, good job. You had Purdue. You curb stomped them 56-30. You beat Arkansas 56-13. That's like watching a high school team, Class 5A, beat up on Little Sisters of the Poor. They beat Notre Dame, Boise State, 28-7. They beat the Wolfpack 36-7. You beat USC by 10. That's your 1 win. That I think we can all agree is like, great job. Good stuff. They beat Pitt 37-15, beat up Syracuse, and then wrapped up the season with a win over Stanford. Like, it does not inspire hope. Let me put it that way. 10-2, great job. Great job. My thing is, when it comes to Notre Dame, they can be crybabies all they want. Again, they're a legacy school. They deserve to be treated with some modicum of respect. But at the same time, I think if you want to show respect to the game of college football, you need to get your ass in a conference tomorrow. Because an independent and just choosing whoever you're going to play, just not a fan of. It's just not how I see it. If it were me, I'm straight up talking about everybody saying it's time for you to join a conference. Join the Big Ten, join the ACC, because that's the only way I think you are getting into a college football playoff if these scenarios pop up again. And for those that are mad about it, stay mad. These guys deserve it. Absolutely. JMU, to a certain extent, they were benefactors of the anarchy. But to say that Tulane didn't deserve to be in it is absolute BS. They beat Power 4 schools in Northwestern to open up the season in a really nice win, and then they beat Duke. All of that is to say that the haterade that's being sipped, I wholeheartedly disagree with. But we'll continue the conversation about the Tulane Green Wave because they deserve a lot of love, but I think there may be some trouble ahead. And it's more because of the announcement that Will Hall is now promoted to the head honcho for the Green Wave, has been the passing games coordinator for the program, wide receivers coach, and he got promoted to being the head coach after the departure of John Sumrall. And I think that's because the carousel has slowed down, and now you're sitting here without a head coach. You missed out on Billy Napier. You missed out on, I think the biggest hit would have been to get Blake Baker, but it's safe to say I think Blake Baker wants to see things out with LSU now that you have a good offense, because that defense for LSU in 2025 was pretty doggone good. And also, I think he realizes that, you had a lot of recruits that were wanting to play for him, a lot of 5 stars. Why not give that the chance? Now, you look at Will Hall. I remember covering whenever he was part of the Cajun staff back in the day. Then he was over at Tulane 2019, 2020, went over to Southern Miss for a cup of coffee, didn't necessarily work out all that well. And then he made the move over to Tulane, joined the team this past season, and now he is the head football coach for the program. And I'm just kind of interested to see how this is going to work, because his record was not all that great at Southern Miss. Just hot take. I think that he is one of those coaches that is really good at being offensive minded, being a passing game coordinator, and doing a really good job with it. Because over the course of his career, he's been very good at running offenses. Even during that lame duck year that he was part of the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, the offensive coordinator, when the team gave up on Mark Hudspeth, you saw some flashes, and then he moved over to Memphis, Tulane. Again, didn't work out all that well as a head coach over at Southern Miss after a decent start in 2022. But you go 1-6, and you get canned 7 games into your third season as a head coach. Not necessarily the greatest look. And what's interesting is, beyond getting promoted, joining in 2021 in your last year in the Conference USA before making the jump over Southern Miss, every other job he had, he was 3 years as a head coach and out the door, went to go find greener pastures elsewhere, but just did not perform all that well. Now, Southern Miss is in an interesting situation as well because they are having to find a new head honcho running that program. Because Charles Huff, he is exited stage left yet again, this time to go over to the University of Memphis, an AAC program. But I'm intrigued. I think they're going to give Will Hall a very fair shot. And I think the fact that this program is riding a fairly good wave of momentum at this point, I've got to think, I firmly believe that he'll be just fine. It's just going to be a bit of a challenge to start to kind of trust him because, again, records speak everything. Records tell you everything when it comes to a head coach in the past stops he's been. You look at Lane Kiffin. He has been on an upward swing over the last few years. He's led Ole Miss to the greatest seasons in program history, and that's over 100 bleeping years. Tulane doesn't necessarily have that legacy and prestige of certain programs, but in recent years, they have been able to step up and move up in the eyes of people. After all, they are on a college football playoff. That is a huge thing. But you look at the last couple head coaches they've had. Willie Fritz kind of turned this program around, breathed new life into the Green Wave and Yulman Stadium and all that stuff. Can Will Hall do that? And to a certain extent, it feels very similar to what we saw over in Lafayette. Because Billy Napier brought success to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, the likes of which we have never seen before. We look at the history of head coaches for the Cajuns. More often than not, after they leave the Cajuns, they wind up selling insurance somewhere, or selling real estate, or whatever, or just get out of the profession altogether, or more or less get blacklisted. I digress. This tells me it was a necessity to find somebody in-house because you swung and missed on some guys. I don't think that was because they didn't like the job. It's just because some of them, especially Blake Baker, sees a lot more potential for him to grow as a defensive coordinator now that the offense has its stuff together. That's the real $1 million question when we're kind of positing the future for those LSU Tigers. Well, Hall, it's a culture, retaining the culture type move. A lot like what we saw with the Cajuns going for Coach Des, a guy that had been with the program as a player, and he's done good so far. Not necessarily been amazing work year in and year out, but he's done pretty well. I mean, he's kept the ship afloat, not necessarily keeping it up to the levels that Billy Napier had it over the course of his time, but I think he's done a serviceable job. After all, get to another bowl game, not necessarily the most thrilling opponent, the Delaware Blue Hens. Made me think about that scene from the movie Wayne's World where they're in front of the green screen. They're like, hey, I'm in Delaware. And they're like, yeah, we got nothing for the state of Delaware. One of the tiniest states in the lower 48. And the Cajuns going to be playing them up in Mobile. And from what I've heard, little birdie has told me, looks like the Cajuns marching band may be getting ready for a performance at halftime for that contest to really kick off bowl season. And I'm just going to say this as well about bowl season. I think it is time to have a serious conversation about some of these bowls going the way of the dodo bird. And it's not just because of players opting out all the time. I just feel like it's great to have all these bowls, but at the same time, I think you need to minimize the damage done. Because I saw this from Keith Gill, the commissioner for the Sun Belt Conference, earlier today. Again, we're taping this on a Monday, so you're getting this on Tuesday morning. Is that you have Georgia Southern and App State playing each other for the second time this season in a bowl game. It's not a great look. But the fact that you got teams like Notre Dame opting out of bowl season entirely, players saying, yeah, I'm done, I'm focusing on the draft. I think it's time to start paring it down. And I think obviously you start off with the ones that are not necessarily the prestigious bowls. I think the bowl that the Cajuns are in Mobile, the 6-8, I almost said 6-7, but it's that 6-8 bowl. Like, that's not going to intrigue people a whole lot versus like the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I think the ones that have the most money attached to them, they can stick around. But these ones where it seems like every other year they alternate sponsors and things like that, there's no real consistency, I think those might be the first ones that need to go. That way the focus can continue to be on the college football playoff while also making sure you get the best possible matchups. It would suck to see a Cajuns team miss out that's 8-5. But if that means that we can still see some really good teams in banger bowl games, I'm all the way here for it. Trust me, I've seen the Cajuns miss out on plenty of bowl games back in the day when they, in the tail end of the Ricky Bustle era. Hell, I remember missing out on an opportunity for the Cajuns to host at Cajun Field all the way back in 2005. That was a brutal beat with a three-way tie for the Sun Belt Conference Championship back before they had a title game. But I am going to say I am intrigued to see what's going to happen with Will Hall. And we'll wrap things up talking about the New Orleans Saints because they got another win on Sunday, and I'm sure there are people just bemoaning that simply because, oh, we're not tanking hard enough. I'm like, cry me a river, guys. It happens. The Bucks were beat to hell. Like, there was no way you were getting into a losing situation in that game. But I think there is a bright spot in this. And again, this may be the eternal optimist in me in a weird way because I'm not necessarily the most optimistic person on the planet. But I am a person who believes that tanking is not the answer. And the Saints have never been, let's just say, able to be a tanker, basically. They're not the ones that like to tank all that often. We saw it a lot in the mid-2010s. But if I can see just a glimmer of hope from this Saints team heading into 2026, and it's your quarterback, and obviously you got a pretty good kicker too. We're not going to hate on the Irishman. He missed one on Sunday, but it was a rainy, wet, fairly mediocre ball game. Didn't necessarily see a whole lot from Tyler Shough when it comes to his arm, but we saw him do a little shucking and jiving and running in for 2 scores. A very good thing to see that we're seeing. Obviously, he's been given the keys, and he's done pretty doggone well. A lot better than Spencer Rattler. Again, like the comparison is very different. But, this is a big one, big but here. He can get things done. He can win ball games. That's the most important thing. You get some dogs around him at wide receiver. You get some weapons. You get some offensive line health. I feel like, hot take here, the Saints could be marching into the playoffs in 2 years' time if we start seeing Shough progress and the game slows down for him. People are wanting, for some reason, a guy like Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson. At the beginning of the season, people wanted Garrett Nussmeier. Now Garrett Nussmeier may just be a GA over at LSU. That's just how I feel. That this Saints team, it's not, the rebuild won't happen overnight. You don't need to go get another quarterback. You need to focus on getting some dogs and some units on the offensive side of the football, and also trying to figure out what's next after Demario Davis and Cam Jordan inevitably retire. But you got to build some weapons around the young man that has shown himself to be a little bit better than I think we expected. It's not necessarily perfect. Again, we did not expect the Saints team to be 10-3, but I'm sure a lot of people didn't expect to be 3-10, and the rookie quarterback is outperforming the second-year QB out of South Carolina. I don't think anybody saw that coming. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to complain one bit about it. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. And make sure you subscribe to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you go check us out on YouTube. Been kind of lacking on the exclusive stuff, but we're going to try and pick that up after the holiday season is behind us and we start pivoting towards 2026. So make sure you check it out. The Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Just search us for us on social and a whole heck of a lot of other places. Appreciate you listening.